Now in this one, I'm hoping to help you with your character animation. I'm starting off with this drawing. Say, for instance, this was my character that I created. And to animate this character across the stage. Now, this is all a shape. It's a complex shape. The problem is, of course, is this all on one layer. So, for instance, if I wanted the delivery box separate, I would actually have to go in and use the lasso tool, maybe even the polygon lasso tool. That might be the easiest one. And I would have to really go in there, and this can be really hard to select. That's why if this was on a separate layer, the person was on the separate layer, this would be a lot easier to animate. But I can take a simple drawing like this and animate it as a single piece. So for instance, I select the keyframe, all of it's selected, and just move it across the stage here, like that, off the stage. Create a keyframe at frame 24, and then just click and drag. I'm holding the shift key down so it goes straight across the stage like that. Pretty simple. Now if I wanted him to go back, I can't just animate him back with this keyframe. I have to add another keyframe, because if I were to reverse him in this keyframe, he would actually reverse as he was going across the stage, and we don't want that. So if you want him to reverse automatically, create a separate keyframe, and then I just go into Modify, Transform, and then Flip Horizontal. Now he's going to go back the other way. And then I'll just create my keyframe at the 2-second mark, and then just pull him back. Again, I'm holding the shift key down so that he goes in a straight line, like that. All right, so boom, boom, boom. Don't forget to create your shape tween in between. By the way, this, for some reason, this creates some kind of bizarre issue with his waist. I don't know what the deal with that is. So if I go ahead and play this now. So as you can see, as he's going along, there's some real bugs in there, because this is a complex shape, and Animate doesn't handle complex shapes. So if I'm going to do this kind of animation, let me show you how to do it best. I'm going to go back in time before I did all this, before I created all these tweens, and just Command Z back, back, back until I get about right here. So not too bad here. To preserve the actual look of this, I'm going to turn it into a symbol. So I'm just going to go ahead and convert to symbol. That's right-clicking bottom of the menu there. And I'll just call this moped. That. And now it's a symbol. And now when I insert keyframe, and then just pull this back, like that. This time, instead of a shape tween, I'm going to do a classic tween. So here's the rule of thumb. When it's a shape, do a shape tween. When it's a symbol, do a classic or a motion tween. And at this point, all we've done is classic tweens. And so now it runs across the stage pretty cleanly. Here's the thing. You can create shapes, duplicate it, create a symbol of that shape, so that at one point, if the shape is going to be doing something like this, you can animate the symbol. And then, in the other hand, if you are going to separate things, take the pizza box off and all that stuff, you could actually create a number of symbols and have them on separate layers. But you can go back and forth from shapes to symbols to shapes, as long as you kind of keep the original shape intact, and you can duplicate it multiple times. God, Kitty, you're not helping here. I know you want some food. Let me just finish this really quick. Another way to create a character animation, and I did this very quickly. I just did a frame by frame animation here in the walk cycle. And if I play this, let me do that again. It looks pretty realistic, even though the character is not. Now, another thing the way I did this, though, is I had a template. Notice this template that I have underneath here. Now, I found this template fairly easily by just going online and then doing a search for animation walking template. And then I usually just click the images, and then the one that I used is this one right here. And you can, I think this was a bigger one, you can copy the image, paste it. Now I pasted it on its own layer here, so you see that right there. And then I start sketching on top. Now here's how this works. I'm just going to go ahead and keep layer 2. I'm going to delete that. So to get started, I'm going to go back to this image, and I'm going to copy the image. And then on this layer right here, which I'm starting with, I'm going to Command V, paste the image. Right. Now, another thing too, notice that the stage matches the exact size of the image. And to get that, you just click outside of the image where the stage properties come on, click Advanced Settings, and then I click Match Contents. That way the stage and this image starts out. Okay, so I'm going to create a new layer. The first layer I call Template. Okay, and then what you want to do is you want to lock. First of all, I like to the figures will bleed through, so I'm going to just take this object down. I want to change the opacity on this so that it's not quite as strong. Of course, the problem is it's a bitmap image right now, and so to be able to convert that into something I can actually take the opacity down, I'm going to convert it to a symbol. So I right-click the image, convert to symbol. I'll call it template. Make sure it's a movie clip on this one. Then, once it's a movie clip symbol, then you have all these extra elements. And I'm just going to take alpha under the color effect, and I pulled that down to about 50%. Lock that down. Then on layer 2, which I'm going to call character, I'm going to start tracing out my elements. Now I'm going to pause while I'm doing this, but I'll show you at least the first one. The process that I use is I'm using my brush. You can choose whatever color you want, probably something that really, I'll do kind of a red. I'm taking this down fairly small, and you can change the brush size over on the brush options. But with this one, I'm going to constantly be changing my brush size, so I'm going to be using the bracket keys. Those are the keys on the third from the top row, the very right, second, almost over to the end, the 2 bracket keys, curly brackets and the regular bracket. Okay, so if you press those keys, you can see it gets, the left key gets smaller and the right key gets larger. So I'm just going to do this little tracing bit here. Now I'm going to do a real quick job. I could, as you can see, I could even take some of the shadows that's implied in the template. I could draw those too. Hopefully you'll spend a little bit more time than I do on this. But what I'm doing is I'm just tracing over the outline of this, like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the right bracket key, press it a few times so it's a little bit larger, so I can color in the larger areas like that. Like that. And then, because I have these open areas here, I'm going to take the paint bucket tool and then just fill in those open areas like that. Again, I'm doing this real quick and dirty here. Bracket key to the left to get that a little bit smaller. And then I'll just click there, brush that. Okay, so that is figure number 1. Now, I'm going to unlock the template, click and drag the template over, because think about when people walk, this foot right here is going to come down to this position right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a brand new figure on that. I'm just going to do it like maybe two frames over. Just going to insert keyframe there. And then watch what happens. My template disappears because it does not exist in that second layer. So I'm just going to add, right click, maybe about for a second. I'm going to add a frame, and that will make my template reappear again. Now the problem that I have here is I just created a keyframe with this, and if I wanted to start painting over again, I've already got this figure in the keyframe. So I'm going to delete that keyframe. I'm going to remove it, clear keyframe. And this time, because I'm going to repaint it over, I'm going to do insert blank keyframe. And this gives me the chance to start painting the second one, but I already know where I need to be. So I'm going to pause it for a second here and then paint the second one. I have my second figure painted out. I'm noticing a little bit of it's probably not going to look terribly great. And again, I'm just doing a real quick and dirty job here, so hopefully you'll spend a little bit more time on this. But as you can see now, I've got the little walk cycle happening. Now, if you want to see the two of these together, consider using the onion skinning tools. Those are these tiny little tools up at the top of the timeline. So I'll do outlines, just shows the outlines. I'm going to do onion skin. And then as you can see, my brackets here cover all the frames that I'm using, and you can see all frames at once and where you're at with that. I'm going to turn that back off again. Now I'm going to turn my template back on again, and should have had it locked there. So again, this is my second one, and then I'm going to take my third one over and then just drag it over and line it up to his foot like that. There we go. Oops, just a little bit more like that. And again, 2 frames over, I'm going to insert blank keyframe. And I'm ready to paint this again. So take my brush tool and then just start painting. I'm going to pause for a second. Now I got number 3. As you can see, I'm just doing a real sloppy job here, but here's my figure. You'd want to smooth out the edges and everything, but again, check the onion skin. Oops. Onion skin. And then I'll just expand it over so you see all 3 of those. And rinse and repeat. So move this over, again, line up the standing foot. Insert blank keyframe and draw it out. You may have also noticed that up here at the top I had a little bit of a discrepancy with my key. So you can move your keyframes back and forth. I can even extend this way out like that, and that would make that move kind of hesitate. So you have a lot of control over how you time things, especially when it comes to this technique right here. I'm just going to continue on. So the next one is, I'm just going to pull this over again. Again, you want to make sure that you you're basically positioning this on the supporting foot. So I'm placing that right there. Insert new blank keyframe, and then just start drawing away again. Now again, as I'm drawing here, you may want to consider like different colors. So you might want to take your swatches out, and then you can start adding swatches here to, let's see, I'll just do a new swatch there. If I click new, that's going to, that little icon down here next to the trash can, that's going to take the color that I have. So if you want to do like shading, for instance, I'm going to draw out all the bright areas here with this swatch. Again, I'm doing a real sloppy job here. Now in this particular case, I'm going to not draw shaded areas. So I could take this red color here and then go into my color palette. So I got my swatches palette open. I go into my color palette, and then I have hue, saturation, and brightness. So with that, I can just pull down and darken my hue there, and that's my shadow. Then I go over to the swatches palette and then click new, and now I have a darker red. And it's the same, doesn't it? I don't think it took. There it is. So there's my red. Go to new swatches. There's my dark red. Don't know why I didn't take the last time. And then I'm just creating my dark red. Now I went a little too far with that because I didn't want to go that dark. So maybe I'll kind of ease up and maybe just go a slightly bit darker, but not a lot. I think that would make more sense. New swatch there. There. That looks much better. And there's my shaded areas there. So you can do that. As you can see, there's not a lot of finessing you can do with this brush. Let's go back to the regular one. Oops. All right. So you can, but the whole point really is to make these shapes fairly easy shapes, that not real artsy kind of shapes with very subtle drawings in there. These are mostly like infographic type shapes and so forth. Another thing you can do with a timeline too, if it's hard to work with that small, is you can actually change this little top upper menu. You can change it to large, and then you can actually see a little bit easier, especially in something like this where it's easier to create keyframes. So before I do my blank keyframe here, I'm just going to reposition my template so that it's there. And then I'm going to insert blank keyframe. I said insert blank keyframe. There we go. And I'll draw it again. Actually, in this one, I'm going to play with the size of my brush to maybe make that a little easier. So the small size, I'm going to just draw out the foot. And then I'm going to increase the size a little bit by holding the bracket key down. And then I'm just going to draw up the leg. Try to keep to a side. And the back side. Again, I could have done a darker color for that. This is time is the essence. So I'm just going to draw on there, and then it's just about the size of his ankle. And then I'm just going to pull the the left key back so that I can draw out the foot, that foot, that foot. Now another thing that really would make this easier is if you had a pen tablet. So if you have that, I highly recommend using that. Hopefully I can show that to you in class there. I'm going to turn the template off to kind of clean up some of the edges there. The foot didn't work out so well. Whoops. So draw that in there. Now by itself it looks horrible, but when it actually is in action, it looks much better. And then, oops, go back to the template. This is my last one, and notice what I'm doing with I'm lining the toe up. Insert blank keyframe. And then my last drawing here. Okay, so here's the last drawing. So if you want to see this all in place like that, it goes back like that. And I have the full walk cycle there. Let me just add a frame here so you see that at the end. I'm going to turn this off so you can see this when I scrub. And that doesn't look very good down here. There we go. All right, so play it. And as you can see, it happens pretty fast. But if you go through that, you can now take some liberties here. Like I can take these frames here and then select right click and then copy frames. And then about right here, you can paste frames. And the thing that happened here, because of course it will automatically pop back to the beginning again, you can take these frames, select them, and then click Edit Multiple Frames, and drag this back with the Move tool, and then you can drag these frames out. These frames are moved together as you click multiple frames, and so that moves him later on in the timeline. I'm going to uncheck that. I find that you kind of have to check and uncheck that. See, so now he's moving across the board there, and I'm just doing a copy paste on that. Another thing to consider too is if you want to add more subtle elements, you can create a new layer. And I'll just do face. This is going to be real quick and dirty. But you could do something like, again, on its own separate layer. I'm going to choose a white color here. And I'm really going to take my brush down. And I'm just going to do an eye and a mouth. Obviously not really happy with that. But I'm just going to go ahead and insert. Now this time I'm going to insert keyframe. And then I'm just going to move the expression with him like that. so that each movement that he does, you create a keyframe, and then you just pull the expression with him. In fact, each frame can change, but you just do this multiple times. It could change across his face even. So now you can see he's moving with an expression as well. Boy, that's a scary looking guy, let me tell you. All right, so the last couple of things you want to remember, because this may hit you by surprise. I've got the template layer turned off, but if I run this, you'll see that the template layer is still there. So you actually, if you want to actually get to the finish of this, make sure you delete the template layer before you run this. And now you've got the guy all by himself there.